You're live. I believe we are live now with the Classic Faserip podcast here on youtube.com/theevildm. This will also be available for those that wish to audio download it on the classicfaserip.com website. Join me today is a former host from the past, Matt from Roll for Initiative podcast. Joined us first season of the show, took a little bit of a hiatus, and now he's back. Matt, how you doing, man?
Oh, doing well. It's glad to actually be podcasting or actually in this case, we're doing some video up here on YouTube. So no, it's glad to be back. Good to talk to you again and talking about some classic Marvel.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's been a long time, but this is how we do things now. Video casting and audio casting. So
yeah, the audio only is second-class citizens at this point in the world.
No, not at all. There are some people that just like audio, but we like to do both now. So that's how we were doing it for the entire second season of this show. And that's how we're doing it going forward for this new season here, starting over. Hopefully Keith will be able to join us next episode when we have it in probably a couple weeks. He did give me an email, which I did not realize that he sent was late last night, saying that his laptop was still out of commission. So that's why he was not able to get back to me, because he has no way of getting on the internet except if he has a phone. I'm not even sure about that. I would assume he has a phone. But
yeah, you would hope he had some way to send the email, but that could also be tin can and string, like some of the internet connections I've had in the past. If you've listened to the live audio of RFI.
Well, let's not get into that, because RFI is dead and we buried it with that last episode.
Yes. Dead, never coming back. Please don't bother us, because we have this show. We have.
You know what? I still get people bothering me all the time. When are you bringing back RFI?
No, it's not coming back. Maybe in 20 years you get an anniversary episode. Until then,
you're gonna have to deal with this show, Classic Faserip. So anyway, it's been probably, thinking of my watch here, about 1 year since this show actually had an episode, because I think it was October 2019 in the beginning-ish when we had an episode. So it's been 1 full year. So we're rising from the ashes like Fin Fang Foom, and we're doing a show. I don't know how regular this show is going to be, because we're going to focus on community material only. As far as rules are concerned and how that works, that will be you can read those yourself. The books have been around 30 years or whatever, or 40 years at this point. So if you can't figure that out, then I don't know what to tell you. No, you can ask us questions, obviously, if you have anything you want us to answer. And I don't even know what our email address is at this point, so I'm just going to give mine out.
Bullpen at Classic Faserip, because it was
that it?
Yeah, because we made Bullpen. I'm renewing the domain, so you should think I would have that memorized by now, because it's actually up in a couple days, and I just renewed it. So
awesome.
But yeah, it was bullpen at classicfaserip.com, I believe. Yes. Classic Faserip podcast. Yeah. Bullpen at classicfaserip.com.
Nice. Okay, so you can email us there for the show, or you can head over to classicfaserip.com, and I think you can click on email us there, and you can directly email us. Do you still have some t-shirts from the early episodes of Steve? We actually have a live chat here, so I'm looking at it right here. Steve Watson says, glad to have you back, Matt. And
it's good to be back.
Do you still have some t-shirts from the early episodes of what, this show? Well, we did have a t-shirt. Yeah, I don't even know if it's still available anymore, to be honest. But we'll take a look and see if there is anything for you there. So anyway, you can also head over to the Marvel Superheroes RPG, the unofficial KANE project group on Facebook. And there you can see all the projects being worked on by the community. And just trying to distribute the episode out so everybody knows we're live now, finally, because some people came by and then they left. And
yeah,
because unfortunately, Matt can't read.
Yeah, I can't read. I've been away from gaming for a while, doing the playing video games and whatnot that don't require actual letters and words. So,
hey, Joe Fisher, welcome to the chat. Anyway, So while we've been gone, there has been a slew of things released by the community. And just to give you a list of what we have Reed Richards' Guide to the Universe. We have Marvel Vampires, Monsters Unleashed, Bring On the Bad Guys Volume 2, Anita Blake Vampire Hunter Handbook, New Warriors Book 1, the original series, Realms of the Occult, Rampage, Street Wars, Africa in the Middle East, The Hand, The Darkhold, Weapon X, Monster of Frankenstein, and the Tome of Dracula, Realm of Magic. Wait, is that the same thing? No, Tome of Dracula and Realms of Magic Judge's Screen. Yeah, that was a tongue twister. I didn't put a space on that one. Realms of Magic Judge's Screen. Thank you. Woo! So we have all those things there. You can head over to their Facebook page and do it. I don't think they may have been released on classicmarvel.com or classicmarvelforever.com. I'm not sure how fast Cutter, I believe his name is, gets them up. And yeah, I'm not sure how fast he transfers them over, but I'm pretty sure he's pretty good at that, transferring those back and forth, so everybody knows what's going on. So with that said, we're going to take two things from that list tonight, and we're just going to take a little look at them to give you guys an idea of what the community themselves can do. Now, I just randomly picked something, and not because of any other reason, but I picked Anita Blake Vampire Hunter Handbook, and Matt, you picked Marvel Vampires.
Yes. Two nice little companion pieces, I must say.
Yeah, so I'm going to hunt Matt's book, right?
Yeah. I'm curious to actually just see Sigmund, the penguin.
Okay. Well, I actually am not familiar with Anita Blake at all. I didn't ever read the comic book series Guilty Pleasures at all. So when I read this for the first time, I was like, this is actually a pretty cool comic book setting that I would have probably read in the 90s if I knew it existed.
Yeah, it was actually based off a series of novels first that turned into the comic book. And from friends that have read the novels, they started off really good, and then they turned into vampire erotica.
Oh.
So, but that's where Sigmund the Penguin comes in and all of that kind of fun stuff.
Reading this, it kind of reminded me of I see a cat going by.
Yes.
It kind of reminded me of if like pre-Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel all mixed into one.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. It's just a different take on that kind of setup. But yeah, it's actually a really cool setting and would be great to integrate into any sort of vampire hunter occult campaign. I mean, it's made for comic books, really.
It is. So this is what the cover, I'm sharing my screen right now, Matt. We're on the side as opposed to on full screen, but it's actually a cool looking setup.
Yeah.
But this is the cover of the book. It's one of the cover of the comic books, obviously, but it really looks sharp. They did a good job on this. And this one was done by Louis Danoff, Andrew Goldstein, Killian Gray, Keith Kilburn, and Steve Jolly were basically the ones that were behind this entirely. Let me just center this up a little bit. So this book is obviously rated a little bit more, I guess, risque by the community is for younger audiences out there because of the nature of the book, the blood, and the I don't think anybody's actually nude, but there are some people in lewd outfits in this thing.
Yes. So. Yes. It kind of in line with the book series, really. So it fits.
How many novels was it? You say it was?
It was a whole series. I mean, I've kind of lost track because Anita Blake, I remember first hearing about this series in the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
So it's been around for a very long time.
I honestly have never heard of it. Didn't know it existed until I read this. But anyway, this is part of the Guilty Pleasures.
Yep. 21 books. So.
Oh, you just Matt Fu that?
Yes. Another callback. Right.
Yes, a Matt Fu. Anyway, so the breakdown basically of this is you get a general brief overview of the world itself and gives you a little bit of background on her and where the book that she was a part of, it setting up things. And it really is, I mean, reading this, I was just like, damn, man, I want to go get out my like Buffy and Angel books and start playing a game, like a role-playing game of that, but or basically run this world, because this is the shit that I really love, is vampires, hunting, things like that, and just the lore going on. So anyway, you get a brief, I shouldn't say brief, almost 2 pages of history of her and overview pretty much, and then you get breakdowns of each of the characters, the main characters going towards the minor characters in this book. And obviously, they designated her as Earth 97534. I thought they cleared up all the Earth things.
I kind of lost track because there was that whole contest of champions where they were kind of merged, and then I kind of stopped reading Marvel. So I am not current, because we'll actually reference in the other book kind of where I fell off with one of the characters that I was curious to check out.
Yeah, I'm not very current on Marvel myself. I'm more of a DC person. I've been current on that entirely. And I don't know, but I was really interested in reading all these characters in here, and they give you a good, I'm not one to use established characters too much in any of my games. I mean, if it's a Star Wars game, yeah, sure, maybe I'll, Darth Vader might show up. If it's a Marvel game, like my Marvel game, I had like the X-Men show up for like one scene, or had a big bad guy show up. I had Doom in a couple episodes, but he was more of a background character that was luring the players in, I should say the characters into the story. Didn't really play a big part in the story. I don't really like using established characters, but with that said, if I was going to use just this book and give the players the option to pick certain characters out of this book, I don't think they'd have a problem, because a lot of the stuff is right here that you need. Yeah.
I mean, it's just the detail that was put in. You could tell they actually did their research into the whole world and lore of it. And most of your players won't already have predetermined frames of reference, most likely. And the roommate is now making an appearance in the background. Wave hi to the internet.
Hi, roommate.
Call me.
Okay. Not realizing we were live on the Googles.
Yes, on the Googles. Anyway, so they go into depth about all the main characters in this and the minor characters. And this character so reminded me when I was reading the character of I can't think of Wesley from Angel. I don't know why. As soon as I saw the picture and I started reading, I'm like, dude, this.
He's the Watcher.
Yeah, he reminds me of the Watcher. I was just like, but it is an absolutely cool done book. I love how the Marvel books by this community copies exactly how TSR did it and not missing a beat. Yeah. I know Steve Jolly did a whole YouTube video for I think it was 2.5 hours or 3 hours he did, where it was just him doing layout, showing people how to do layout like this in Word. Not Word. In design, not in, what are the other ones? The beta ones? I can't.
Yeah, there's like Quark is like an older one, and all the different layouts. But in Word, that is fantastic.
Yeah. My dude uses Word.
Yeah. And the great thing about these, I'm someone who actually has all of the original Marvel handbooks in a binder. So I can easily take these, print them all out, and throw them in my binder. And it looks like it belongs. It's fantastic.
So, hold on a second. Anyway. So we have the main characters here. I want to go back to the page here. So we got the main characters here. We got a whole list of them. And then what's even better is now we get some explanation about vampires themselves and other supernatural characters. So you can run them or include them into your game if you don't want to use this setting. But you like how the vampires are. You like how the ghouls are. You like how the monsters are in this world. You got a whole entire setting here. I mean, basically, you could pick and choose out of here what you want to do.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this very much opens you up so you could run like a Resident Evil or a Silent Hill or something like that. that type of style and feel campaign just from having those base zombies and vampires and just suit the supernatural. So I mean, it's just fantastic.
Stephen Watson is saying the multiverse reduction has come and gone. The the unofficial canon project still refers to the Earth designations in the related books. Okay, so they're following along with it regardless of what Marvel is doing, which is probably the best thing to do anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, because just having that fork is probably smart. So.
And okay, so on top of that, now, okay, so you got your characters, you got some monsters that you can play with and move around, whatever. Now we go to the actual like settings and locations of it. So all the major events that were like repeated, used over, and probably big storylines, I'm thinking, or main points of the story are all broken down here starting on page 60. So we got 90 pages of just a supplement. Yeah, different location and events. So we have the Church of Eternal Life, and it goes on with the characters that are involved with that. If you didn't have it, Dead Daves. I have known nothing about this series other than just what I read here, and I love love reading everything about this. So I didn't know these were novels, so I may actually go grab one of the novels because you said it was pretty good in the beginning.
Yeah, basically you'll start to see it trend more towards vampire erotica, like in the middle of it, and that's when you kind of just want to jump off.
I can see what it becomes risque here, I guess. I don't
know. Yep. I mean, because that's a thing with just vampires in general. There's always that seduction to it. So I mean, considering it's part of their power and it's always been part of the Western lore of vampires anyway.
Well, I can assure you, when I was playing Vampire the Masquerade in the late 90s, early 2000s, just about every role-playing game session we have, there was something sexual involved with the vampires, no matter what.
Yep.
And the funny thing was, it wasn't the guys, it was the girls in the group doing it. Because we had the GM or the storyteller was a girl, and then I had 3 other girls, and there were 2 guys, and us 2 weren't doing it. They were initiating it. We were just sitting there going,
okay.
Yeah. But anyway, you're right. Vampire sexualization, all roll in hand to hand. It's, how things do. At least it didn't sparkle. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
So we get all the locations here for you to use inside of your game, whether you want to use it with this setting or actually just take pieces of it. Maybe you want to use the strip club. Maybe you want to use the Church of Eternal Life as part of your story, but you don't want exactly what you have here. You have the idea and the concept down here for you. Maybe you want to use the same people. We just change the names. I don't know. It's up to you.
Right. Yeah, this is more your typical Marvel handbooks is just like a list of characters, and it's just all the characters. This is more like one of the box sets almost, because you have the settings, you have more of the campaign world that you don't necessarily get in some of the other handbooks. It's just a roster of heroes and villains. So this is like a complete package just to create a world, and I think that's great. So yeah, you can just pick and choose. You don't even have to use all of it. Just maybe like a location just to integrate that little seed in your existing Marvel world. So that way it's there, but you don't have to draw attention to it if you don't want to make that the focus, but it could be a subplot.
Yeah. And you get everything in here plus more, and plus a lot of semi-nudity type of things going on.
Yeah.
But as was said here in the chat, this title will probably be under the Max line, if anything.
Yeah.
The Max line was what?
That
late
was
90s?
Late 90s, early 2000, Garth Ennis.
Yeah. Which I didn't really care for the Max line. I mean, I was a big Punisher fan at that end because I was heavily into Batman and everything, and the darkness and Punisher from the early 90s and everything. And I didn't like what they did with the Punisher in that, so whatever.
Yeah, Punisher's always been a character that he'll have good runs, and then he's just kind of there when they lose sight of what they're trying to tell with him.
Franken Punisher?
Oh, God. Or Punisher with the War Machine armor.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand that one myself. But.
Yeah, that was when I was still getting the Punisher comics, which actually I still do. But those, I just kind of bought them to add to the collection, and they went straight to the filing box. I didn't even read them.
Yeah, I kind of gave up on Marvel when I was reading it when he was the War Machine, and then right after when that other guy, I can't think of his name, took over, and it became more very, very political like to me, and I was just like, nope, out.
Yeah, they rebooted it after that because Marvel cannot help but reboot things, and it was actually pretty good because it was Punisher, basically dealing with Baron Zemo, who had the island, and then Punisher has Jigsaw pretend to be Punisher, and Punisher gets framed for a bunch of stuff he didn't do, so he gets thrown in jail on Baron Zemo's island, and that wasn't too bad. So, but
anyway. I gave up on it then. I've been reading more DC than anything else, but that's not what this podcast is about.
No.
So that's pretty much that book. It's done really well. It's 91 pages.
Sigmund. Yes. Yes.
There. You happy? You're Sigmund the Penguin?
Yes. Yeah. That is her sidekick. Sigmund the Penguin.
Was that in the novels too?
Yes. Sigmund was in the novels. Because his first appearance was in the book in 1993. That's how long this series has been around. The comics weren't until the 2000s.
Wait, so okay, I see. I was thinking it has Guilty Pleasures here in 1993. That's when the comic came out. I didn't realize they were referencing the book itself.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That I didn't understand. I thought they were referencing the comic. Had no idea. So, whatever. Yeah. But yeah, we have everything here you need to run a game. And they even have some maps for you if you want to. Let me zoom out over here so people could see this.
Yeah.
You can head over to youtube.com/theevildm and look up the Classic Faserip podcast. We have a hell of a lot of episodes on video here, and this is one of them. Episode number 23, we're back. So you can see the maps here that they have in case you're interested in listening to the audio version of this and you want to see some visuals of Matt and our pretty faces.
Yes. Surprise running by my roommate.
As long as she stays clothed, it doesn't matter, dude. I don't care. But, well, maybe. Anyway. So these are the maps. 91 pages. Hopefully you will go grab it from Facebook. Go to the unofficial KANE project group, or you can go to classicmarvelforever.com, and I believe Cutter should have them up. Yeah, this is definitely appropriate for Halloween discussion or pre-Halloween discussion.
Yeah.
Hey, Rick Anderson, how's it going, man? Anyway, so Matt, what are you gonna do? You're gonna do Marvel Vampires?
Yes,
correct?
the vampires. Yeah, because I'm like, okay, it's Halloween. We need to do something a little on season, and what better way is than the Marvel Vampires? This book, for me, I've never been into the horror genre of the Marvel world.
No,
no, I've never got it like Tomb of Dracula and all that stuff. From a lot of it had their origins in the 70s when that was the thing.
Wasn't there an entire Earth vampire the multiverse for all the characters were vampires?
Yeah, it's just like there's the Marvel zombies, and there's all kinds of wackiness when you go deep into it. But as for just like 616 Marvel, a lot of that is coming from this. The roots are in those 70s comics. And when you go through this book, you'll start getting some really interesting, like deep cuts of characters that are from that period. And so that was like, oh, this is like a whole genre that I've just never been exposed to. And then when you get into just like the content, everything in the Marvel world of vampires, it's Dracula based. Dracula is the guy. And he has a lot of similarities to like our real world ish myth and legends of vampires. So they're drawing from that inspiration, but making it their own Marvel, just like they do with everything else. How, unlike DC, Marvel's based in uses real world places and real world cities. So they're also pulling from real world lore for vampires as well. Yes. So, yeah. So I was going through this, and it was like, the first thing that caught my eye is I went to the table of contents and was skimming it. I'm like, hell cow? What the hell? So at that point, it's like they had a vampire cow where Dracula was weak and needed to feed on something. So he drank the blood of a cow. Yeah, there's Dracula. And yeah, he is like the one that rules them all. And there is a whole story arc we'll get into.
I thought that was
about
page 20. I was trying to get to that hell cow that you were talking about. Oh, it's page 28. Okay, I misread that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So Dracula feeds on it and makes a vampire cow. And of course, the character is going to interact with the vampire cow, right? Deadpool. Yeah. It's a Deadpool.
Of course.
And then the poor demise of, it's like, so it was just like, what is this? But it's almost like one of those Peter Porker type things is what I was first thinking. But yeah, so that just struck me as interesting. And then you end up with the whole time loop of Deadpool warning Deadpool and Hellcow when they got captured together. Be careful of the sun. And then they walk outside and Hellcow dies. And then so Deadpool goes back in time to try to fix it and sees Deadpool eating a hamburger. And yeah, but eventually they work it out. So Hellcow is okay for anyone concerned. But with Hellcow and every other vampire, you start to see, though, there's like a base set of powers that all vampires in the Marvel universe get. This is like the template you could stick on any character and they have it. So when you get into their undead form, you can just pick anyone. It's pretty much identical for every character, that undead form template, and even the creatures of the night. So like with Jubilee, she's the one that was actually involved in when I kind of fell off Marvel. The whole storyline, how she became a vampire. And then it also coincided with the whole...
Wait, this is X-Men's Jubilee?
Yes. She got... Yeah. As a way, there was Zarus. Dracula's dead in the Marvel world at this time. And Zarus is trying to unite all the vampire clans and take the place of Dracula. So he wants to, like, and the X-Men are in Utopia. So what he does is he finds Jubilee, kind of charms her. She gets an exploding gimmick that basically infects you with vampirism, but not permanent. So she gets an attraction to Zarus, sneaks out from the X-Mansion to go meet up with him, where he bites her and turns her into a vampire. At which point the X-Men need to go save Vampire Jubilee. So what they do is they nullify Wolverine's healing factor, infect him with vampirism, let him get bitten so he can become a vampire and then be part of the vampire team. Then his healing factor kicks back on, fights off the vampirism, and they also during this time resurrected Dracula to fight Zarus as well. That's how convoluted this crap was getting. So, but yeah, Jubilee's currently a vampire in the Marvel universe. So, yeah, and it was around this time you also had Scott Summers becoming the super dick during Phoenix Force. And at that point, I stopped reading Marvel. X-Men.
Well, they I don't know, maybe it was like 4 or 5 years, maybe 3-4 years ago. They did X-Men 92, the comic. I don't know if you picked that up.
Oh, no, I didn't.
They did a vampire arc in that. And Jubilee was a vampire in that too, I believe. I don't know. It's been so long since I read that. But I mean, because I was so pumped when that comic came out. I was like, a continuation of the actual, cartoon series? All right. And of course, they canceled that. But because people liked it. That's why.
Right. Yeah.
But they did a whole vampire world thing. So that's why I was like, wasn't there a and I started looking into it. There was one of the various Earths of vampires. But yeah.
But yeah, that's your Vampire Jubilee. But yeah, you basically have that template of that you can just throw the undead form, the creatures of the night, the vampiric movement. That's pretty much consistent for every vampire character. So you just slap that on anyone and you now have your vampire Captain America or whatever you want to do. So, but yeah, and then a lot of these, when you go and look at them, they're all their first appearances are from those 70s comics. So you can tell there's like research, deep research like this one. Dracula Lives, 1974. That was the first appearance. And I've never heard of Nicholas BORDIA before this. So yeah, I mean, you've got your deep cuts of vampires. So if you have players that are really into the Marvel lore and more contemporary-ish, you can pull out vampires they're not going to expect unless they're really into the like 70s, because that's how deep this went. So, and then this even later on goes into, there's vampires in Marvel that aren't actually vampires, like Morbius. He's got like the vampire traits, but his wasn't from being bit by a vampire. He got his power through a scientific accident that made him a vampire. And so they even have a section on those types of characters, and like Selene, the psychic vampire. And then, of course, we get into the vampire hunters as well of the Marvel world. So you got your Blade, you got your Hannibal King, your Rachel Van Helsing, if you want to go the Van Helsing route, because we still are pulling from real world-ish myth. So
they fixed with House of X, they fixed Jubilee, no longer a vampire.
Oh, they did.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Marvel. It was so many. How many reboots in the past 5 years have they had? It almost feels like they have one like every other year. But yeah, this book, it's just got a little of everything, and it has some deep cuts that I really like. And then also with the Anita Blake, you could have your Anita Blake, Rachel Van Helsing team up too. So you could have your Thelma and Louise of vampire hunters there going around just staking and killing everything.
There's one right here on the screen, 1939. I mean,
right. Yeah. I mean, that's what I was most interested in. I'm like, oh, these are all characters I haven't heard of that don't really get played, but they went in and dug those out like the old Marvel handbooks would. And I just thought that was just great. So yeah, I mean, this is definitely one to look up, because you could always introduce just one. You don't have to go full on vampire. You could just have one going around working behind the scenes, because a lot of these just blend into everyday life. There's some of these are just normal people, but vampires on the side. So yeah,
a light bending amulet. Huh.
Yes.
Some little powers going on here. I mean, some items going on for your game as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And now we're into the part of the vampires that aren't true vampires under Dracula's clan. So yeah. Ball, and yeah, it has the whole backstory on how they got these BLOODSTORM, an alternate universe Storm, bitten by a vampire, because there was a whole story arc where Storm got bitten by Dracula, and I think it was like in the 80s, and so that's that universe's Storm is a vampire.
They used her in X-Men 92 as well, that comic, because I was kind of confused on that character, because I'm not really a big X-Men reader. I only watched the comics. I've read a very few comics in the 90s and the 80s for them. So
yeah,
events.
Yeah, it was like I was reading the X-Men pretty religiously in the 90s around basically the Jim Lee X-Men 1. From there, that's where I got into the X-Men. I read some backwards and then fell off in like the mid 2010s. Morbius, who's pops around in all kinds of characters, books. The good guy vampire.
But yeah, the 90s was the pinnacle for Marvel, I think, to be honest. I mean,
yeah.
When I talk to people about Marvel comics, they're always like the 90s. So
yeah, the 90s was when the comics themselves had their most popularity. Comics was kind of fad as much as just a part of culture. And then eventually, as the internet picked up and Marvel started to get more into, let's make foils and let's make issue number ones to get the collector's market, because that market was just on fire then. And that's why so many of the comic books from then aren't worth crap, unless you have like the random issues of Cable First appearance, which I actually bought for like 50 cents back in 2000, so I'm happy there. Or Deadpool, there's not much.
I specifically remember going to comic book shops with this girl I was hanging out with back then, and she was just like, I'm buying, and she had like a stack of comics, all issue number ones. And I'm like, do you read those? She's like, no, I'm buying it for my son, who at that time was like a baby. Like one. And she's just like, I'm buying this for him. I'm gonna bag and board these things, and it's gonna be worth something when he's our age. I'm like, no, it's not.
No.
I go, look at the stack in your hand. And she's like, okay. I go, look at the shelf. She's like, okay. You see how many ones they're producing of all these, foils and everything? They're not going to be worth anything. And those are not, they were Image Comics, and they're not worth anything.
No. It's like the ones that are worth money is like, I have like the first appearance of Gambit, the first appearance of Jubilee, and those aren't even crazy, but they're worth a little bit. Cable and Deadpool are like the anomalies from that period that are just like insane money if you have them.
Well, yeah, the specialty covers, as Adrian is saying in the chat, is they're cool. They're, I should say this, the covers are worth, the comics are worth what people want them to be worth. I should say what they're worth to the person that wants to pay for them.
Yes.
Like everything else in life, this phone, this notepad, it's worth what it's worth to the person that wants to buy it. So what I may not think is worth something, you may think is gold. So another man's garbage is another man's treasure, I think is the proper phrase.
Yeah. The main problem with the 90s is everything was overprinted. That's the biggest thing. When you look at the print runs inside the books, like that X-Men one, Jim Lee was like over 1 million copies sold.
Remember that one, the X-Force one that was in a special, it had Cable on the front cover and it had the Topps card in it, and it was in plastic.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the one you're referencing?
That is the one that's the first appearance of Cable, and I have the first printing of it. That one had a few reprints, but it wasn't. No, I'm thinking New Mutant. New Mutants was the first appearance of Cable. X-Force one was we're going to try to sell comics promo item.
Because I was going to say, I have that one, and I don't remember that ever being worth much, except maybe a few collectors here or there, wanting to buy it. But
yeah, it was just overproduced. Just like
I just remember my buddy was like, oh yeah, dude, you got to get this comic. Don't open it. It's going to be worth zillions. I'm like, no, it's not going to be worth zillions.
No.
But I got it anyway because, I was a teenager and I was like, yeah, okay, cool.
Right. Yeah. No, for the time at retail, it's worth it for that. Absolutely. But you don't buy comics as an investment. If you're buying comics as an investment, you're buying Silver Age, you're buying Golden Age, and select stuff from the 80s. It's like I have like the first Punisher series, like the number ones from all of those. Those aren't worth crap.
Now, I want to say that there are some comic alternate covers that are worth a lot of money for some odd reason, and I'm not sure why.
Limited editions. That's why they do smaller print runs. They're comic store exclusives, and they're sold with that artificial scarcity built in from the beginning. So that's why those alternate covers are like the blank covers that you can take and have the artist sketch their own cover. Those are worth money because they're artificially scarce. They're only printing X amount of copies.
I remember there was a comic that I got like a year ago. It was actually one of those covers I think you're talking about. It was Garth Ennis's, what was he writing at the time? Green Lantern. Thank you.
Yeah.
Green Lantern. That's it. And it was one of those, I got the book because I was reading Green Lantern because I knew he was back on it. I'm like, okay, this is going to be good because he's really good at it. I get the comic. I'm like, okay, cool. I read it. It's really good. I put it in my comic book stash, and then I go to the comic book store like a month later, and then I see the exact one I have, the white one where he can draw on it with that special cover, like $60. I'm like, what?
Yep.
The guy's like, oh yeah, I don't know why. It shot up in value. I'm like, okay, glad I have it then.
Yeah. It's just like retailer exclusives. A lot of times those are tied to the number of that particular book they get. So the more of a particular book they buy, it makes them eligible for more exclusive books.
Or like that stupid limited comic series they did of Kylo Ren.
Oh, yeah.
From when the last Star Wars movie came out. Like issue 1 was so limited that people were selling it on eBay for $100. I was like, it's not even worth that.
Right. Yeah, that's how the Wolverine Origins, the first series, was. That when it first came out was actually just the #1 in general. It was selling out so quick. It was actually worth money. I haven't checked it recently, but that's one from like the mid to the late 2000s that actually did initially have some buzz and value. But yeah, it's just so much anymore with the collectibles and comics. It's artificial scarcity is what's creating the value, not actual demand.
But anyway, you have anything more to say about this book itself? Or
yeah, just that also, just like the Anita Blake, this at the end of it has your vampire sex and your mythos, so you get the vampire lore of the Marvel universe. How we were talking about like the vampire universe, and it basically explains more of the convoluted Dracula being the first vampire and how it spread and all of that. And it makes a good read just to get a feel for what vampires are in the Marvel universe, because like if you get into just the real world myth, it's a little different depending on what part of the world you're in, and this will just help you narrow it down to the Marvel world. So yeah, I'd read that as well, the chapter 5. And then yeah, there we have Blade, the vampire hunter everyone thinks of when they think of Marvel, Wesley Snipes.
Yeah, I guess this goes into. I wonder if they would have Anita Blake in here. I didn't.
No, she's not in this one. This is strictly Marvel characters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Hannibal King, who looks a lot like Constantine.
We won't talk about that.
Deadpool, Deathstroke.
Quincy Harker. I'd not heard of any of these people.
Yeah, like I said, yeah, they're pulling out the deep cuts, and I'm like, this is fantastic. Got your Rachel Van Helsing, who looks a lot like someone else. But she came first. 1972, Tomb of Dracula, #3.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and then we get your organization of vampire hunters. Sliver Eye.
Got a wild and furious chat going on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they go some organizations here.
Yeah.
Solomon Kane. Yeah, they've used Solomon Kane quite often in various comics. I remember seeing him.
Yeah. And another one around since 73.
Yeah. Vampire by Night.
Yeah. Basically, Vampire by Night is the vampire version of Werewolf by Night.
Oh, okay. And then, yeah, this is the Jubilee that I think was in the X-Men 92, this particular looking one.
Yeah.
Vampire Appendix, basically how to sum up the book and look things over, it looks like. Yeah. Just some footnotes and
Yeah, no, it's a great book if you have any interest in the vampires.
The vampires, is that like the iTunes or the app?
Yes.
Then we get some background on, apparently just on vampires themselves, which this is Marvel. This is a quality TSR level book, as they all have. I mean, looking from the original books that they did moving forward to now, would they start doing this? Captain Steven, you're in the chat here. When was the first time that you guys started doing this? Was that 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago? I don't know. For now, I'm going to say 6. But going from the first book to now, they've moved and increased their quality of these books to outstanding. I mean,
yeah.
Not that they were bad then, because it was a labor of love by fans, but now it's just like,
yeah, they got the system down. They've upped their game, and it's on point.
You couldn't tell. I mean, if you printed out one of these books and printed out one of the old handbooks up with the same type of level, because I mean, these vary between books. I mean, some people do like the old classic Marvel style. Some people do the later, style. You know how they changed the style of the handbooks towards the end?
Yeah.
Was more graphic-y novel-like compared to just, module-like of TSR in the beginning. If you compare them side by side, I probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
No, I mean, they've got the design down and the content as well. I mean, it fits perfectly in line.
Joe's saying there's a new Werewolf by Night with a new person that is a werewolf.
Oh
Boy.
yeah.
So yeah, I definitely would go grab these things. We will put a link up in the show notes to the, I think it's a Google Drive that all these are in, right?
Yeah, there's a Google Drive, and then unless you want to, or you can go to the Facebook page and find them as well.
Probably be just easier just going to the Google Drive. We'll put a link in there because I think it's a public link, and you can just go in there and download until your heart is content to get all these books and more.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, so I guess that's really going to be it this week because we wanted to come back, tell everyone what we're doing. There'll be more shows to come.
Yeah.
Hopefully Keith will have his laptop fixed and he can join us. So we'll have a nice 3-person show because Keith always has a lot to add to these shows.
Yeah.
And his presence is, his presence is missed, his absence. It's well known because he was a big help in getting this podcast restarted after we kind of, walked away from it then. And I'm like, you know what? We need to continue. And, thank you, Rick. I appreciate it. Rick was just saying it's good to see the podcast return. So, yeah, I think we should be back, I don't know, in another couple weeks. I'm going to try to push us on a 2-week schedule, maybe a 3-week schedule. But maybe I'm going to talk to Matt after this is done and we'll decide what we want to do. And then I'll email Keith and we'll get back and forth on what we want to do. But so what was that email address again, Matt? I know you had it ready.
bullpen@classicfaserip.com.
And now that Matt's back, he can control the email address like the old days. So I don't have to keep asking him, Matt, what are we doing? What's going on?
Right.
ClassicFacerip.com is our website. You can go there and listen to all the past episodes. Go to Apple Podcasts now.
Yeah.
They don't call it iTunes anymore. Apple Podcast, find our episode. It's also on Google Podcasts and wherever you can find your favorite podcast. You head to our website. We have an RSS feed there for FeedBurner or whatever the hell it is. And you can just cache it into your favorite app and listen to the show whenever you'd like. We have 22 other previous episodes and more to come. So with that said, we're going to head out of here. And this is Vince for Matt saying goodnight, everybody.
Good night.